My name is Amelia, and I am 28 years old. What I am about to tell you still makes my stomach twist every time I think about it. It started with a simple family group message, the kind that is supposed to be cheerful, filled with plans and little hearts. But this one hit like a hammer. My phone buzzed, and on the screen appeared a new chat titled Adam's Family Hawaii 2025. At the top of the message was my mother's voice, written in capital letters, as if it were an official decree. This trip is mandatory for everyone. Diane has decided. 10 days in Hawaii this summer, and no excuses. Mandatory. That word cut through me. I felt my pulse race as my chest tightened. For most people, a vacation is joy. For me, it was a flashing red light, a warning. Memories I had tried to bury rose to the surface. Memories of growing up in a home where money was never love, only control. My childhood was built on the unshakable lesson that money was a weapon. My parents used it to buy loyalty, to silence questions, to shame anyone who dared resist. Vacations, holidays, birthdays. Everything carried invisible price tags and unspoken debts. Nothing was ever free. Nothing was ever simple. And here I was staring at another so-called family vacation, already feeling the trap tightening. I tried to breathe, but my mind was racing. Images from my past flickered like a reel. The fights behind closed doors when a credit card was declined at a restaurant. The embarrassment in my mother's eyes, followed by her forced smile as she pulled out a backup card. The way my father signed loan papers for yet another luxury car, with the confidence of a man who thought appearances mattered more than reality. I should have known this Hawaii trip would not be different, but a small childish part of me still wished it could be. That maybe, just maybe, it could be about family and not about power. I felt that familiar knot in my stomach, the one that always came before my parents demanded something. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, unsure how to respond. The chat was already filling with emojis from my brother and enthusiastic replies from cousins. My name was dropped in messages I hadn't even written. Amelia always wanted to see volcanoes. She loves snorkeling. This will be perfect for her. Lies, all of them. I had never said those words. This was the beginning of something bigger. I knew it in my bones. My family never asked. They decided. And if I dared question, I was branded ungrateful. That night I lay awake replaying the group message in my mind. 10 days in Hawaii, mandatory, healing old wounds. The irony was bitter. There was nothing healing about financial manipulation. It was a sickness that had followed us for years, and now it was coming for me again. I want to pause here to ask you something. Have you ever been in a situation where family tried to use your credit card or pressured you into paying for something without your consent? If you have, drop a comment below. Your stories matter because when we share them, we realize we are not alone. That was the hook of my story. The beginning of a storm I could feel gathering long before the clouds broke. On the outside, my family looked like the picture of success. A polished house in the suburbs, shining cars in the driveway, my father shaking hands like a powerful man, my mother hosting dinner parties with fine china. People whispered, "What a perfect family." But behind those closed doors, our so-called success was built on quicksand. My father, Gerald, owned an insurance company in downtown Seattle. He liked to remind us that appearance was everything. People do business with successful people, Amelia. He would say, his pen scratching across yet another loan document for another luxury car. He claimed nobody trusted a businessman driving a beater. What he didn't say out loud, but I knew even as a child, was that he could not stand to look average. By the time I was 10 years old, I could identify the difference between a Rolex and an Omega. I could recognize designer labels on sight. I understood that in our family, money was not about security or comfort, it was about status. The more my father borrowed, the bigger the show he put on. And my mother, she was no different. Diane tracked our neighbors' vacations, renovations, and purchases as if it were a competitive sport. The Andersons just booked a cruise to Alaska, she would announce over dinner. We should look at Mediterranean options, something more exclusive. It was never about joy, never about rest. It was about proving we were better. But the bills were hidden in drawers. The fights about overdue payments happened late at night when they thought we were asleep. Sometimes a credit card would be declined at a restaurant. My mother's embarrassed smile would flash as she pulled out a backup card, pretending nothing had happened. The silence about money was deafening. Nobody talked openly. Nobody admitted we were drowning, but I could feel it. Even my brother James, 4 years older, began mimicking my father's habits. In high school, he maxed out his very first credit card within months. He called it living big. I called it repeating mistakes. The facade finally cracked when I was 15. My father's company had been failing for years. The glamorous cars, the vacations, the renovations, they were all funded by loans stacked upon loans. And then the secret spilled like acid. My father had a separate apartment downtown and a girlfriend working in his office. The divorce that followed was nuclear. The war over assets revealed the truth no one could deny. Our house had not one, not two, but 3 mortgages. The company was worth a fraction of what he bragged. My mother had her own hidden credit cards debt stacked behind his back. For the first time, I saw the truth in black and white. My family was not rich. We were reckless. We were addicted to appearances, slaves to an image nobody cared about but us. It was during that chaos that I began to realize something. If I didn't take control of my own life, I would become another pawn in their endless cycle of showmanship and debt. That thought lit a fire inside me, one that would guide every decision I made in the years to come. I share all this because I know some of you have lived it too. Maybe you grew up in a home where money was a mask, where you never knew if the bills were paid, only that you had to smile in front of neighbors. If that resonates, let me know in the comments. Your voice matters, and when we share, we start to take our power back. From the outside, we were perfect, but inside we were rotting. That truth shaped me more than anything else, and it set the stage for the battles still to come. The divorce was like an earthquake that ripped through our family. It did not just end a marriage, it revealed the rotten foundation everything had been built on. I was 15 when the mask was finally ripped away. Court documents showed the truth no one wanted to admit. My father's company was worth only a quarter of what he had always bragged about. Our home had 3 mortgages stacked on top of each other. My mother had secret credit cards, debts he never knew about. They even fought over who would get to claim me as a dependent on their taxes, while arguing about who had to pay for my education. To them, I was not a daughter. I was a number on a form. It was in those moments that I realized if I did not escape, I would drown in the same cycle of lies and debt. My father wanted me to study business so I could take over his crumbling company. My mother insisted I should go to law school like her brother, but I refused to live their script. I chose accounting, not because it sounded glamorous, but because numbers could not lie. After years of deception, I craved transparency. Those 4 years of college were brutal. I worked 30 hours every week at a campus coffee shop. On top of that, I tutored math for 15 hours a week. While other students went to parties, I pulled double shifts. I fell asleep on library tables, balancing textbooks with exhaustion. By the time I graduated, I had $60,000 in student loans. But here's the truth, every sleepless night, every missed party, every double shift was worth it. Because for the first time, I knew exactly where I stood. No illusions, no hidden credit cards, no whispered arguments about money behind closed doors, just clear numbers in black and white. When I landed my first job at a mid-size accounting firm in Portland, the salary felt enormous compared to years of scraping by. I rented a small 1-bedroom apartment, furnished it with secondhand pieces, and framed my diploma on the wall. That place might have been modest, but it represented something bigger than luxury cars or fancy vacations. It was independence, and that independence became a target almost immediately. My mother asked for a loan to renovate her new condo bathroom. My father called about temporary cash flow problems at his business. My brother James wanted me to co-sign a lease for a new car because his credit was unfairly damaged. The requests were endless. The repayment promises were vague. The guilt trips were sharp. I gave in once, $3,000 for my mother's small renovation project. The money disappeared, and I never saw it again. That betrayal stung worse than any unpaid bill. I realized if I did not protect myself, I would be dragged back into their spiral. So I sought therapy. Dr. Winters became my lifeline. She helped me understand that my financial health was part of my self-care. You would not let family destroy your physical health, she said. So why allow them to destroy your financial health? It took 2 years of weekly sessions, but eventually I built my own personal policy. I would never loan money to family. I could give gifts if I chose, but never with the expectation of repayment. I would not co-sign loans. I would not share credit accounts. And most importantly, I would be transparent about these boundaries, even if it created conflict. The fallout was harsh. My father tried to disguise requests as investments. My mother accused me of not loving her enough if I would not help. But each time I stood my ground. And slowly, painfully, they began to accept that I could not be manipulated anymore. By the time I turned 27, I thought I had achieved peace. They still made little jabs at family dinners calling me stingy, but I could handle that. I thought the storm had passed. I was wrong, because that peace was just the quiet before a much bigger betrayal. And let me ask you, have you ever worked so hard to build your independence, only to feel like your own family was waiting to tear it down? Share your experience below, because I know too many of us have lived this. And if you are listening now, hit subscribe, stay with me, because what happened next will leave you breathless. Independence was supposed to be the end of the story. I thought once I built walls strong enough, no one could touch me. But freedom in my family's world was never something they respected. It was something they saw as a resource to be tapped. The first year after graduation, my little apartment felt like a fortress. I kept my budget on a spreadsheet, tracked every dollar, and learned to live within my means. My walls were bare, my furniture secondhand, but the air was light. It was mine. I had fought for it with sweat and sleepless nights. But soon enough, the knocking started. At first it was small. My mother called about a bathroom renovation in her condo. She said it was urgent, that she just needed $3,000 for a small project. I caved. I wired the money expecting repayment. Weeks passed. The renovation ballooned. The money never came back. When I asked, she laughed it off. "Oh, sweetheart, do not be so uptight. It was just a little help." Next came my father. His business was struggling again. He framed it not as borrowing, but as an investment. It will help everyone in the long run, Amelia. Families help each other. His pitch was polished, the same salesman voice I had grown up with. But I said no. James was next. He had maxed out his credit after his divorce. He asked me to co-sign a lease for a new car. "It will rebuild my credit, and you will not even notice," he promised. I refused. His silence on the phone was heavier than any words. Every request carried urgency. Every refusal came with guilt. I was the selfish one, the ungrateful daughter, the stingy sister. But therapy had given me a new lens. Dr. Winters reminded me that boundaries were not cruelty, they were survival. So I wrote my policy on paper and pinned it to the wall above my desk. I do not loan money to family. I may give gifts within my budget, but never with repayment expected. I do not co-sign loans. I do not share credit. I read it every time the phone rang. It was not easy. The backlash was brutal at first. My mother cried, "If you loved me, you would not let me struggle like this." My father scoffed. "After all we sacrificed, you cannot even help with a little cash flow." James accused me of abandoning him. But each time I held my ground, and each time the storm passed quicker. By my 27th birthday, they had mostly stopped asking. They still made little digs at family dinners, calling me stingy, but they had learned my line was real. Or so I thought. Because the truth is, my boundaries were never accepted. They were only waiting for the right moment to break them. The calm lasted 2 years. 2 years of relative silence. 2 years of building a life that felt stable for the first time. I worked hard, paid down loans, built my savings. I even started to feel proud. And then one Tuesday morning, a message buzzed on my phone. It was from my mother, a new group chat. Adam's Family Hawaii 2025. I did not know it then, but that message was the spark that would ignite everything. The group chat started like a fire spreading through dry grass. Within minutes, my phone filled with messages. My mother had renamed it Adam's Family Hawaii 2025, and filled it with links, emojis, and declarations. "This will be the perfect family reunion," she wrote. 10 days in Maui and Kauai, healing old wounds, mandatory attendance for all. That word again, mandatory, my heart sank. By lunchtime, 14 more messages had appeared. Pictures of oceanfront resorts, lists of activities, schedules that looked like military orders. My name was dropped again and again. Amelia loves snorkeling, so the premium reef tour is a must. She has always wanted to see volcanoes, so the helicopter tour is essential. None of it was true. I had never said those things. But she wove the story as if I had planned it myself. Cousins sent strings of exclamation points. My aunt asked about dates. My brother James chimed in with excited emojis. The enthusiasm felt orchestrated, like a performance everyone had rehearsed except me. That night I called James privately. "When did I ever say I wanted this?" I asked. He sounded surprised. "Mom said you were excited. She told us you had been pushing for a family trip for months." I froze. "James, this is the first I've heard of it." He sighed heavily. "Well, that tracks. Every time I asked her if you were on board, she changed the subject. She has been planning this for weeks." It was classic Diane. She built her case before I even entered the courtroom. The following days only confirmed it. She created a shared folder filled with itineraries, glossy brochures, and activity planning sheets. Every hotel was 5-star. Every activity carried a premium price tag. Then she uploaded a shared expense tracker. But the sheet was empty. No numbers, no totals. When I asked about costs in the group chat, my messages were ignored or met with vague phrases like, "We deserve this splurge after everything we've been through." Behind the curtain, private messages began flooding in. My Aunt Carolyn texted, "So glad you convinced your mom to plan this. She says you've been asking for a reunion for years." My cousin Jessica messaged, "Your mom said you might cover some of the activities since you're doing so well at work. That's so generous of you." My chest tightened with every word. It was not just a vacation, it was a setup. She had framed me as the sponsor of this grand escape while I was left gasping under the weight of lies. In therapy, Dr. Winters had warned me about triangulation, when someone manipulates by telling different stories to different people, making themselves the center while sowing confusion. I recognized it instantly now. My mother was painting me as both the planner and the financier, positioning herself as the benevolent leader while setting me up to foot the bill. Anxiety clawed at me. I wanted to scream into the group chat to expose the manipulation, but I knew better. My family thrived on performance. If I confronted her too soon, she would twist it into proof that I was selfish, unstable, ungrateful. So I waited, and when she announced a family Zoom call to finalize the details, I knew that would be my chance to ask the one question nobody seemed willing to answer. I stayed quiet in the chat, but inside I was preparing, not with excitement, with dread. I want to pause here for a moment. Has anyone ever put you in a situation where expectations were forced on you without your consent? Where you were framed as the generous one only to discover it was a trap? If that has ever happened, share your story in the comments. And if this feels all too familiar, hit subscribe, because what came next shows just how far manipulation can go. The Zoom call was coming, and I was ready to ask what no one else dared. The Zoom call arrived like a storm cloud. I sat at my desk during lunch, notepad, open, pen ready. My mother's smiling face filled the screen first. Behind her, I could see the glow of a perfectly staged lamp, the same performance lighting she always used for her online book club. "Exciting news, everyone," she beamed. "This is the meeting where we finalize everything for Hawaii." Boxes popped up one by one. James and his wife Stephanie, Aunt Carolyn and Uncle Roger, cousins leaning in with bright grins. 14 people in total. The chorus of greetings made it feel more like a pep rally than a family conversation. But I was not here to cheer. I was here for answers. The presentation began immediately. My mother launched into a detailed itinerary, snorkeling, helicopter tours, luau spa days. Every activity was premium, every resort 5 stars. The excitement in the room was electric, but something was missing: numbers. "Mom," I interrupted gently, "before we go further, could we go over the expected costs for each person?" She laughed a high, dismissive sound. Oh, Amelia, always concerned about her precious budget. Her words hung in the air. I felt the sting, but I kept my expression neutral. I just need to know what I'm committing to. A beat of silence followed. Then, in the same casual tone one might use to discuss the weather, she delivered the blow. Flights are $1,000 each. Hotels about $300 a night, but we'll share rooms to save. Activities, let's set aside another $2,000 to be safe. If you cannot afford it, sweetheart, you can stay behind. Her tone was syrupy sweet, but every syllable carried a blade. Shame disguised as concern. The message was clear: if I questioned the cost, I would be the cheap, difficult child. The room shifted. People looked down, cameras flickered off. Nobody spoke up. The silence felt like a weight pressing against my chest. I took a breath. Thank you for clarifying. That helps me plan. My calm voice was a shield. Inside fury was building, but I would not give her the satisfaction of seeing me crack. Satisfied, she pivoted instantly back to luau options, as if my question had been nothing more than a hiccup in her flawless show. I muted my microphone and sat back listening as the performance continued. My pen scratched quietly across the notepad. Flight 1,000, hotel 300 per night, 10 nights, shared rooms, activities 2,000, total over $5,000. $5,000 for a vacation I never agreed to. A trip planned without my input, painted as my idea, and now wielded as a test of loyalty. By the end of the call, I had already made my decision. I would not go. I drafted a message declining, politely citing work commitments. I even rehearsed how I would send it firm, clear, without anger. But something inside me said to wait, to sleep on it. To make sure I responded with strategy, not emotion. That delay, that single night of patience, turned out to be critical. Because the very next morning, everything escalated in a way I never could have imagined. Friday morning began like any other. I arrived at the office early, grabbed coffee from the break room, and settled in to review notes for a client presentation. My world still felt calm, steady. I had no idea the ground was about to collapse. At 9:17, my phone buzzed with a credit card alert. I ignored it at first, thinking it was just the latte purchase from the cafe downstairs. But then it buzzed again, and again. 4 alerts in less than a minute. My pulse spiked. I opened the notifications. United Airlines, 4 separate purchases, each for $4,500. $18,000 charged to my card in under 5 minutes. The room tilted around me. My first thought was fraud. Some hacker had stolen my information. I called the credit card company, immediately clawing through the automated menu until I reached a representative. My voice shook as I explained. She looked at the charges. Yes, I see them here. 4 business class tickets, Portland to Maui, departing June 12th, returning June 22nd. The confirmations have already been emailed to your account. Would you like me to read the passenger names? My stomach clenched. I already knew. She read them anyway. Diane Adams, Gerald Adams, James Adams, Stephanie Adams. My parents, my brother, my sister-in-law. It wasn't a hacker, it was my family. The rage that coursed through me was sharp and cold. Those charges are unauthorized. Cancel them. I need to dispute immediately. While she processed the dispute, I opened my email on my work computer. There they were, 4 booking confirmations, paid with my card. Each marked as read, but I had never opened them. Someone had accessed my account, my passwords. My phone buzzed again, a text from my mother. Thank you so much for your generous gift, sweetheart. Business class will make the flight easier on your father's back. We can't wait for this special trip together. Love you lots. The timing was surgical. She had waited until I was in meetings, used my card, checked my email to mark the receipts as read, then sent her thank you. It was not clumsy theft. It was calculated fraud. I finished the call with the bank, locked my card, and requested a replacement. The representative urged me to file a police report given the email breach. My hands trembled as I hung up. Next, I called United Airlines directly. Cancel the reservations. I said, my voice like steel. They were made without authorization. The agent confirmed. The tickets were gone. Then I called my email provider, changing every password, enabling 2-factor authentication. The tech support confirmed logins from an unknown device early that morning. Someone had my password. Someone had invaded my digital life. It was my own mother. By 11:30, I had locked everything down, documented every call, and saved screenshots. Only then did I respond to her text. I did not buy those tickets. I have disputed the charges and canceled the reservations. Do not ever use my financial information without my permission. Her reply came instantly dripping with indignation. What are you talking about? You agreed to help on the Zoom call. Everyone is counting on you. Why embarrass me like this? Classic gaslighting. Pretend I had agreed, twist the story, make me question myself, but this time I saw it clearly. The rest of the day was chaos. Calls, voicemails, messages exploding on my phone. My father demanding I call him. My aunt scolding me about family loyalty. My cousins confused. My brother caught in the middle. But underneath the noise, my decision was clear. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't family drama. It was identity theft. It was financial fraud. And it was war. Have you ever experienced that moment when the truth slammed down so hard there was no gray area left? Share your story below because I know too many of us have been there. And stay with me because the confrontation that followed was even more explosive than the fraud itself. That Friday evening, I drove home in silence. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing calls from my father, messages from my mother, voicemails from relatives who had already taken her side. But instead of panic, I felt something different this time, a cold clarity. When I pulled into my apartment complex, headlights flashed in my rearview mirror. A black Mercedes was parked in the visitor's space. My father leaned against the hood, arms crossed, suit pressed tie, perfect. Even here, even now, he was dressed like a salesman. I stepped out of my car, slowly clutching my keys. "Amelia, sweetheart," he said, moving in for a hug. I stepped back. "Why are you here? And how did you even get my address? I never gave it to you." He waved his hand like it was nothing. "Your mother has it in her emergency contacts. Listen, we need to talk about this little misunderstanding." "There's no misunderstanding," I said flatly. "Mom stole my credit card information and bought $18,000 worth of tickets. That's fraud." He smiled, but his voice tightened. "Your mother was just trying to help. You know how important family is to her. She thought you had agreed. Maybe you forgot." I stopped at the security door to my building. I never agreed to pay for business class tickets. Not once. Well, he shifted salesman mode, flickering. Maybe there was a communication error. But now the whole family is upset. Your mother is in tears. James and Stephanie already asked for vacation time. This is creating a real problem. A familiar pressure built inside me, the urge to smooth it over, to fix what wasn't mine to fix. But I heard Dr. Winter's voice in my head. "You didn't cause this. You can't control it. You're not responsible for curing it." So I took a deep breath. The problem was created when Mom stole my information. I disputed the charges. That's the proper response to financial theft. His face flushed. The charm cracked. "After all we've done for you, this is how you repay us, by accusing your own mother. What exactly have you done for me?" My voice was quiet but steady. "You refused to help with college unless I studied what you wanted. I worked multiple jobs, I took loans, I supported myself since graduation. Everything I have, I earned. We gave you life," he snapped. "We clothed you, fed you, raised you, and now you can't help your family with one vacation?" I pulled out my phone, opened the voice memo app, and hit record. "Did you know Mom was going to use my card without asking?" He froze, then his shoulders sagged. "We discussed options. Your brother's credit is maxed. Travis is between jobs. Your mother's cards are near their limits. So yes, we thought you could handle it. You decided to use mine without permission," I pressed. "We were going to tell you after," he admitted. "Once everything was booked, so you wouldn't overthink it and back out. Your mother thought you'd be more agreeable." The casual way he confessed stunned me, like theft was just another negotiation tactic. I pushed harder. "Have you done this before, used other people's cards?" His silence was enough. "Then finally, your brother needed help last year. He couldn't get a loan, so your mother used Jessica's card. It all worked out fine once she understood." I felt sick. It was a pattern. Not a one-time mistake, an entire system of financial abuse. "Families help each other," he barked when he saw my disgust. "You have plenty of money and barely any expenses. You could easily afford it if you weren't so selfish." I reached for the scanner on the security door. "I'm ending this conversation. Leave or I'll call security." His hand shot out, gripping my arm so tightly it hurt. His voice dropped venomous. "Fix this before it gets worse. Your mother already told everyone you bought the tickets. If you don't follow through, you'll tear this family apart. You'll be cut off completely." I pulled my arm free and held up my phone so he could see the red dot of the recording. Thank you for making your position clear. This conversation is over. His eyes widened. He spun on his heel, stormed to the Mercedes, and peeled out of the lot. I stood there shaking, but inside a steel certainty formed. This wasn't just about me anymore. My parents had been stealing from the whole family, and it was time someone said it out loud. Saturday afternoon came with another buzz on my phone. A new message from my mother typed with the same authority as if she were chairing a board meeting. Emergency family meeting. 2 p.m. sharp at Aunt Carolyn's house. Attendance required. This affects everyone. I nearly deleted it without replying. The last thing I wanted was another stage-managed ambush. But then James texted, "Please come. I think it's time everyone heard the truth. I'll back you up." That gave me pause. My brother, the one who usually caved, was ready to stand with me. So I drove across town, stomach knotted, determined not to let them twist this into another performance. When I walked into Aunt Carolyn's living room, it felt like a tribunal. 14 people gathered, cousins, aunts, uncles, even my grandmother who rarely left her retirement home. My mother stood front and center, eyes red from rehearsed tears. My father behind her, with one hand on her shoulder. They looked like a pair of grieving saints, perfectly staged. "Amelia," my mother began, her voice trembling. "We've called this meeting because your actions have deeply hurt the entire family. Everyone was looking forward to this healing trip. Your sudden reversal has caused pain and confusion." Before I could answer, Aunt Carolyn jumped in. "Your mother has been planning this for months, dear. She only wanted something special for all of us. I don't understand why you would embarrass her like this." I steadied my voice. "I never agreed to purchase tickets. I never offered to pay for any part of this trip. In fact, I asked about costs on the Zoom call because I had serious reservations." "That's not true," my mother snapped. "You specifically said you wanted to contribute since you couldn't help with planning. Everyone heard you." I looked around. "Then tell me, what exactly did you hear me say? Can anyone quote my words? Did anyone actually hear me offer $18,000 for tickets?" Silence. People shifted, eyes darting. Uncle Roger finally spoke. "Well, I wasn't on the call, but Diane told us you had agreed." "Exactly," I said, Diane said. "But none of you actually heard it because it never happened." That's when my mother twisted the knife. She lowered her voice, full of false compassion. "Amelia has been under tremendous stress at work. The doctor thinks she might be experiencing some memory issues related to anxiety. We've been trying to support her." My chest went cold. What doctor? I demanded. She exchanged a meaningful look with my father. "Sweetheart, we don't need to discuss your private health matters in front of everyone. The important thing is that we support you." Gaslighting in its purest form. Make me doubt my own mind, turn the room against me, and position herself as the loving protector. "This is absurd," I said firmly. "I am not suffering memory loss. I am not seeing any doctor for anxiety. What happened is simple. Mom used my credit card without permission." "Why would your mother steal from you?" my grandmother asked, genuinely confused. "She said it was your gift." "Everyone heard from Mom," I answered, "not from me." And right there the trap began to close around her. Because in that silence, Jessica stood. Her voice shook, but she spoke anyway. "I believe Amelia. The same thing happened to me last year. Aunt Diane said it was an emergency with James's car, so she used my card. I never agreed. She promised James would pay me back, but it never happened." Gasps spread through the room. My mother's expression hardened. "Jessica, that was different." "No, it wasn't," Jessica cut her off. "You called saying your card wasn't working. You asked for my number to order birthday supplies. Then I saw a $3,000 charge for car repairs. You lied." Then Travis shifted. "They used my card too. For Mom's kitchen renovation deposit. Said it was temporary until the home equity loan came through. The loan was denied and I was stuck with $8,000. One by one the stories spilled out. Cousin Michael's card used for furniture. Emma's card used for medical bills. Every pattern the same urgent need, promises of repayment, gaslighting when questioned. The performance crumbled. The room turned. And for the first time in years, the truth had a voice louder than my parents' lies. Tss. The room buzzed with nervous energy, like a hive cracked open. Every new confession made the air heavier, the tension sharper. My mother's carefully staged role as the martyr was slipping fast, but she wasn't going to surrender quietly. "You are all being dramatic," she snapped, her voice rising. "We only ever borrowed when there was no other choice. We always intended to pay it back when circumstances improved." James finally spoke, his voice rough with years of exhaustion. "When have circumstances ever improved, Mom? When have you ever repaid anyone? My credit has been destroyed for 3 years. I couldn't even rent an apartment without Stephanie's name on the lease. And it all started with you asking me to help just this once." Stephanie nodded grimly. "We almost went bankrupt. Every loan, every card buried us. And when we tried to bring it up, you told everyone we were selfish and ungrateful." My father stepped forward, jaw-clenched voice taut with anger. "Enough. We did what we had to do to keep this family afloat. If we occasionally took initiative instead of begging, that was for everyone's benefit. The ingratitude here is unbelievable." "Initiative," I repeated, my tone sharp. "Is that what you call identity theft, fraud?" His eyes narrowed. "Don't be so dramatic. This is family. Families share resources." "No," I said firmly, my voice cutting through the noise. "Families don't steal. Families don't gaslight. Families don't threaten their children to protect lies." The words cracked something in the room. Cousins who had been silent shifted uncomfortably. Aunt Carolyn's face drained of color. My grandmother, sitting quietly in the corner, covered her mouth with a trembling hand. And then my father delivered the final blow, the naked threat that revealed everything. "If you push this any further, Amelia, you will no longer be considered part of this family. Do you understand me? You will be cut off." The silence that followed was deafening, but I had been preparing for this moment. I reached into my pocket, pulled out my phone, and pressed play. The recording from the night before filled the room, my father's voice clear and undeniable. "We were going to tell you after. Present it as a done deal so you couldn't overthink it and back out. Your mother thought you'd be more agreeable once everything was booked." Then, his admission about Jessica's card. Then, his anger. "You ungrateful little," followed by the threat to cut me off. Gasps erupted. My grandmother's face went pale. Uncle Roger leaned forward, his jaw tight. Jessica grabbed my arm in silent solidarity. The mask was gone. The truth was in the open, impossible to twist away. My father stammered. "That recording was made without my knowledge. It's illegal." "Oregon is a one-party consent state," I replied calmly. "As long as one person consents, it's legal." I consented. The meeting dissolved into chaos. My mother stormed out. My father following close behind, his face twisted with fury. Aunts and uncles argued. Cousins huddled, whispering in shock. The fragile system my parents had built, years of manipulation, lies, and theft, collapsed in a single afternoon. For the first time in my life, the spotlight was no longer on me as the stingy one or the difficult child. It was on them, and they could not stand in it. Let me pause and ask you, what would you have done in my place? Would you have stayed silent to keep the peace, or stood up and risked being cut off? Leave your thoughts in the comments, because the choice I made next would take the fight beyond family drama and into the realm of law. When I left Aunt Carolyn's house that night, the cool air hit me like a release. The chaos still echoed behind me, shouts, arguments, the sound of my parents storming out. But inside I felt something I hadn't in years. Certainty. For so long I had questioned myself every time they accused me of being selfish. Every time they told me I was ungrateful. Every time they twisted my words. But now the truth had spilled into the open, undeniable. My cousins had spoken, my brother had spoken, and I had the recording. For once, it wasn't my word against theirs. Still, clarity didn't mean safety. By Sunday morning, my voicemail was full. Messages from my father calling me a traitor. Texts from my mother playing the victim. "You've embarrassed me in front of the entire family. Do you even care what this stress is doing to my health?" Aunt Carolyn wrote long paragraphs about loyalty, forgiveness, family, unity. My grandmother left tearful messages begging me not to tear the family apart. But I knew better now. This wasn't about unity. This was about control. I spent that Sunday hunched over my desk, piecing together the evidence. Screenshots of the airline charges, records of my calls with the bank, the email log showing unauthorized access, notes from my conversation with my father, and of course the recording itself. The more I documented, the clearer the pattern became. This wasn't one mistake. It was years of theft disguised as borrowing. By Monday morning, I was sitting across from Alicia, a fraud specialist at my bank. She listened carefully, her brow furrowing as she scanned my notes. Unfortunately, this is not uncommon with family-based identity theft, she said. The emotional ties make victims less likely to report. Perpetrators count on that silence. Her words made my skin prickle. She was right. Silence had been their weapon for decades. Alicia helped me freeze my credit with all 3 bureaus. She walked me through enhanced security protocols, 2-factor authentication fraud alerts. Step by step, I felt my financial walls strengthening. For once, I was not patching holes, I was building fortifications. But Alicia's final recommendation hit me hardest. You need to file a police report. I know it feels extreme when family is involved. But without documentation, it becomes your word against theirs. With a report, you are legally recognized as a victim. That word victim sat heavy in my chest. It was hard to admit, even harder to own, but I nodded. I'll do it. That afternoon, I met with Officer Martinez at the local precinct. He listened patiently as I described the charges, the hacked email, the family meeting. He didn't laugh. He didn't dismiss me. He took notes, asked sharp questions, and logged everything. We see this more than you'd think, he said gently. People assume strangers are the biggest threat, but family and close friends often have the easiest access. Walking out of the station, report in hand, I felt a strange mix of grief and relief. Grief that my parents had brought me here. Relief that I had finally drawn a line they could not cross without consequence. Of course they didn't see it that way. By Tuesday, my mother showed up at my office, making a scene in the reception area until security escorted her out. My father called my boss, claiming a family emergency required my immediate attention. The manipulation wasn't over, it was escalating. But I had made my choice. I wasn't going back into silence, not this time. And let me ask you, have you ever had to take something private, something family, and make it official, legal, even though it broke your heart? Leave a comment below, because I promise you those choices are harder than most people realize. And what happened next proved just how far my parents would go to protect their web of control. By Thursday evening, the storm reached a new level. I had endured days of non-stop calls, voicemails, and ambush attempts. My mother showing up at my office, my father phoning my boss, aunts sending guilt-laden essays about forgiveness, even my grandmother begging me to fix this before it's too late. But that night, my father took it one step further. I had just finished dinner trying to relax with a book when I heard the familiar purr of a Mercedes engine outside. My stomach clenched. Moments later, a firm knock rattled my apartment door. I opened it to see him standing there, tailored suit, polished shoes, smile practiced but brittle. In his hand, a folded check. $20,000, he announced, holding it out like a prize. More than enough to cover the tickets and compensate for your inconvenience. I stared at it. What is this supposed to mean? It means, he said, lowering his voice, we can put this unfortunate situation behind us. No lawyers, no police reports, no drama. Take it, cash it, and let's move forward as a family. I almost laughed. This wasn't restitution. It was a bribe. A desperate attempt to drag me back into silence, to turn theft into a private family matter. I can't accept that, I said firmly. This isn't about money. It's about trust, about boundaries. His smile cracked. Don't be ridiculous. Everything is about money in the end. You have it, we need it. That's how families work. No, I said quietly, but with steel. Being family doesn't mean I let you abuse me. It doesn't mean I protect you from consequences. His face darkened. Take the check, Amelia. Call off your legal dogs. Stop humiliating us in front of everyone. Or his voice dropped to a hiss. Don't expect to be welcomed back. I met his eyes steady. I'd rather be alone than live chained to manipulation. Please leave. He tore the check in half, the pieces fluttering to the floor like confetti. Then he turned on his heel, storming down the hall without another word. I closed the door, heart pounding. But instead of fear, I felt power. Because I hadn't folded. Not this time. The following week, Erica, my attorney, sent formal cease and desist letters to both of my parents. The harassment calls slowed. My firm's partners installed screening measures for all calls and visitors. Friends rotated nights staying with me, forming a protective circle. And quietly, cousins who had once been silent started reaching out. Jessica texted daily, sharing her own progress securing her finances. James invited me to dinner, apologizing for not speaking sooner. Even Travis, who had initially sided with my parents, admitted they'd already tried to use his new credit card the day after the family meeting. The truth was spreading, and with every new revelation, their system of control cracked wider. Let me pause here. Have you ever faced a moment when someone tried to buy your silence, to hand you money in exchange for your dignity? Think about what that means, what it costs your soul. Because sometimes the most powerful word you can say is no. And the twist that came next proved just how strong that no had to be. 2 weeks after the tickets were canceled, my attorney's cease and desist letters landed like thunder. For the first time, the calls slowed. My mother's messages shifted, tone less rage, more guilt. Do you realize what this stress is doing to my blood pressure? I could end up in the hospital because of your cruelty. My father stayed colder, short-clipped emails about family obligations or repairing damage. He never admitted to theft, never apologized, only accused. But the truth was out, and it was spreading. Meanwhile, my support system grew stronger. My firm's partners didn't just stand by me, they created safeguards. Reception screened calls. Security escorted my mother out when she tried to drop by. Colleagues volunteered to sit in on client meetings just in case. Instead of being shamed at work, I felt protected. And then came the unexpected solidarity from within the family. Jessica texted me every day, updating me on her new fraud alerts and financial safeguards. James invited me and Stephanie to dinner, confessing things I had only suspected. I should have warned you, he said, staring at his plate. I knew they were planning something. I didn't know it would be your card, but I knew. Stephanie put her hand on his. They had him convinced his loyalty to them was more important than his loyalty to me or even to himself. It took years to untangle that. James's voice cracked. I ruined my credit trying to keep them happy. I lied to my wife. I thought I was being a good son. I reached across the table. We were conditioned to comply, both of us. Breaking that takes time. Even Travis, who had once parroted my mother's lines, sent a quiet message. They tried to use my new credit card yesterday. I canceled it immediately. You were right. For the first time in years, I wasn't alone. The victims were forming a circle of their own. And as that circle grew, so did my resilience. Therapy with Dr. Kelsey, who specialized in financial abuse, reframed everything. This is trauma, she told me, not just numbers in a bank account. Financial abuse is about control, trust, identity. Healing requires more than security settings. It requires reclaiming your story. Each session peeled back another layer. The guilt I still felt whenever my mother's health was mentioned. The reflex to justify myself when my father accused me of being selfish. The nightmares about losing everything. Week by week, the reflex softened. The nightmares faded. I began to breathe easier in my own apartment, no longer jumping at every phone buzz. Of course, the smear campaign continued. My parents whispered to relatives that I was cold, unstable, poisoned by therapy. Some invitations stopped coming. Holiday dinners were held without me. And yet, the sting was less than I expected, because I had something stronger than a seat at their table. I had truth. And here's where I want to speak directly to you. If you've ever had to set boundaries with family, if you've ever been painted as selfish for protecting yourself, I want you to know something. You are not selfish. You are strong. And if you're here listening, subscribe and stay. Because what comes next is how I turned survival into something bigger, into teaching others how to break free. For the first time, I wasn't just defending myself. I was helping others find their way out. And that shift, turning pain into purpose, was the beginning of real freedom. By the 6th week after the Hawaii incident, the firestorm had finally quieted. The harassing calls tapered off after Erica, my attorney, sent a second letter warning of harassment charges. My parents still sent the occasional tearful message, but the edge was gone. The threats had failed. The bribes had failed. Now all they had left was pity plays. In that silence, something remarkable happened. I started to heal. The first signs were small. I no longer jumped every time my phone buzzed. I no longer scanned my email with dread, expecting another fraudulent charge. The constant hypervigilance that had ruled my life since the fraud had begun to soften into a cautious calm. I threw myself into recovery, not just financially, but emotionally. Working with Dr. Kelsey gave me the vocabulary for wounds I hadn't been able to name. Your parents installed guilt buttons in you from childhood, she explained. Every time they press them, you feel responsible for their pain. Recognizing that manipulation doesn't erase the feeling, but it gives you control over your response. That lesson changed everything. I had always thought strength meant not feeling guilt. But Dr. Kelsey showed me strength was feeling it, recognizing it, and refusing to let it dictate my actions. At the same time, the practical side of my life grew stronger. Alicia at the bank helped me set up fraud alerts, regular credit monitoring, and new accounts with layered security. I froze my credit with all 3 bureaus. I reviewed old statements and discovered smaller charges I had once dismissed as mistakes. Restaurant bills in cities I hadn't visited, subscriptions I never signed up for, online orders shipped to my parents' address. The theft had gone back years. Catching it hurt, but it also gave me proof. Proof that this wasn't paranoia. Proof that I had been exploited for far longer than I realized. Instead of collapsing under that discovery, I turned it into a plan. I reorganized my finances, completely diversified my retirement accounts, built a stronger emergency fund, kept meticulous written records. What had started as fraud protection evolved into full financial independence. And somewhere along the way, I found a new passion, helping others do the same. It started with James and Jessica. We compared notes, shared strategies, and created written agreements for any family interactions going forward. Then it expanded. I joined a local support group for victims of financial abuse. We met monthly in a quiet library room, trading survival tips and celebrating small wins. I'll never forget the night Elena shared her story. Her parents had taken out student loans in her name without her knowledge. Or Marcus, whose grandmother had opened credit cards using his social security number when he was still in high school. Their stories echoed mine. For the first time, I sat in a circle where no one asked me to justify my boundaries. They simply nodded, understanding. The hardest truth to swallow came from Elena. Love and respect are different, she said softly. People can love you and still exploit you if they don't respect you. Once I understood that, I stopped confusing manipulation for care. Those words sank deep, because I knew my parents loved me in their way. But they had never respected me, not my independence, not my choices, not my right to control my own life. That distinction set me free. By summer, the Hawaii vacation dates came and went without a word. The mandatory family reunion had evaporated. Instead, smaller, quieter connections bloomed among those of us who had broken free. Dinners with James and Stephanie, honest conversations with Jessica, a slow but steady reshaping of what family could mean when control was stripped away. For the first time, I wasn't just surviving, I was rebuilding. 6 months after the airline ticket fiasco, my life looked nothing like the chaos it had once been. The scars were still there, but they had become reminders, not chains. Financially, I was stronger than ever. My credit score had recovered from the disputed charges. My savings accounts were stable, my retirement investments diversified. The careful review of my past statements had revealed patterns of theft I'd missed before, but catching them gave me power. I wasn't a victim, stumbling in the dark anymore. I was a woman holding a flashlight, exposing every shadow. Emotionally, the healing was slower, but deeper. Therapy taught me to separate guilt from responsibility. My parents still tried their tactics. My mother sent a carefully crafted apology, written in the polished tone of someone coached by a counselor. It admitted a misunderstanding about the tickets, but denied the larger pattern of theft. My father stayed distant, emailing only when absolutely necessary, each message stripped of warmth. The invitations stopped coming. Holiday dinners were held without me. Some relatives whispered that I had overreacted. For a while, that absence stung, but then something unexpected happened. I realized I didn't miss it. I didn't miss the performance dinners, the tense silences, the constant undercurrent of obligation. What I had instead was better. James and I rebuilt our relationship free from triangulation. We spoke weekly, not about debts or drama, but about real things: work, hobbies, dreams. Stephanie joined in, too relieved to no longer carry the secret weight of my brother's guilt. Jessica became more like a sister than a cousin. We texted daily, sometimes about finances, sometimes about silly memes, always with the unspoken bond of survivors. Even Travis, once aligned with my parents, admitted he had canceled his credit cards and set boundaries of his own. And then came the unexpected ripple effect. Aunt Carolyn reached out one afternoon with an email I never expected. She admitted she had looked the other way for years, excusing my parents' behavior as family loyalty. But my stand had forced her to reflect. She invited me to a small gathering at her lake house, promising no expectations, no manipulation. I went cautiously, but what I found there stunned me. It wasn't the whole family, only those who had acknowledged the truth. We cooked simple meals together, played board games, talked openly about money and boundaries. On the last evening, we sat around a bonfire, the sunset reflecting off the water. Jessica raised her glass. "To boundaries," she said simply, "and to the courage it takes to enforce them." Tears stung my eyes. For years, I thought saying no would destroy me. But here I was, surrounded by people who respected my no, who valued me for more than my wallet. Driving home from the lake house, I thought about the girl I used to be, the one who got that first group text about Hawaii, heart sinking, stomach in knots. She didn't believe she had a choice, but she was gone now. In her place was a woman who understood that financial boundaries are also emotional boundaries, that love without respect is incomplete, that sometimes the most caring act is refusing to be exploited. So let me leave you with this. If you've ever felt pressured by family to give more than you can, if you've ever been called selfish for protecting your independence, know this: you are not alone. You have the right to say no. You have the right to be respected. And if my story resonated with you, don't just walk away, stay. Subscribe, share this story, and keep watching, because there are more stories like this. Stories that will remind you true family supports your growth, not your exploitation. When the dust finally settled, I realized the story wasn't just about fraud or credit cards. It was about identity, about who I was allowed to be in my own family. For years, I had been cast as the stingy one, the difficult daughter, the one who refused to play along. But in truth, I was simply the first to break free from a system built on silence and debt. The months that followed brought a softer kind of change. My apartment, once a place I hid from chaos, became a sanctuary. I started planting herbs on the balcony, cooking meals that tasted of peace instead of tension. I joined a nonprofit that taught financial literacy to high school students. Standing in front of teenagers explaining credit scores and compound interest, I felt a sense of purpose I had never expected. Each lesson was a gift I wished I had received at their age. Relationships changed too. Some were lost forever, my parents' certain aunts and uncles who refused to see beyond loyalty. But others grew stronger. James and I became allies, not rivals. Jessica became family in the truest sense. And slowly gatherings with the cousins who had spoken up turned into real connection, free of manipulation. Looking back now, I see the Hawaii trip as both an ending and a beginning. It ended the illusion that family could take whatever they wanted without consequence. And it began a new chapter where respect, not control, defined connection. If you take nothing else from my story, let it be. This protecting your boundaries is not betrayal. It is love, love for yourself, love for the life you're building, and love for the possibility of healthier relationships in the future. Because true family doesn't demand your silence. True family honors your no.